Hi. So another of the presentations whose title is longer than the full Borat movie title, but as you've seen today, that's not the first case. And yes, so the quick history for Swedbank is that already multiple years ago we had cases where once in a while we basically get a full disclosure event where somebody either through Twitter or whatever social media quickly posts some vulnerability that of course raises a panic and you quickly have to address it. And since it was repeating again and again and again, we sort of thought that since it won't going to stop anytime soon, we probably better ourselves do proactively and sort of implement responsible disclosure policy and get all the internal processes within the bank to work so that in the future it would all this activity become more coordinated and
take this one then. Probably
yeah, thanks. So for us it was really the life that pushed us to implement the RDP. And actually this session it was planned that depending on audience amount, this would be a Q&A session mostly so that I could tell you our experience so that if you want to implement RDP in your organization, you would get some feedback from someone who already has done it. So I can really in very short, like 5 minutes, tell everything that I already have in the slides, and the rest we can actually do this interactively. So yeah, what we expected and what we sort of defined in the RDP, that you shouldn't like DDoS us or do something crazy, just similar as in national law respect that you should only do minimal damage and report details to us. And we promise to review all the findings, fix it, and provide feedback as the incident progresses, not the incident, but disclosure that we have received it, we have verified that it's real, the fixing is ongoing, and if we need to forward it to some third-party provider, then it's provided and so on. And as soon as we have implemented the fix, you're actually allowed to already publish it publicly. One thing that since we didn't have yet experience at that point, we were doing it at the end of 2014, so it's almost 2 years now since we've had it in Scandinavia, and in spring of 2015 we implemented it in Baltics. We have never set a deadline how soon we will resolve any RDP case, since if it's in something very serious and internally developed, then it can actually be a matter of days to fix it. As soon as it's something that is outsourced for some non-critical website, then it can take longer because we have to contact those providers. And if it's some problem with some equipment from some vendor, then it could really take months. So we don't want to limit ourselves to setting some deadline that we know we cannot guarantee that we will meet. But yeah, in past, everything was published basically in social media. The biggest problem that we actually had to face in a lot of cases, I get the question, how much time and effort did it take to implement the RDP? I think combined it was actually 1 or 2 maybe person months within the organization if you count all the hours spent by every colleague to draft all the idea and so on. And then afterwards to maintain it on a daily basis during these last almost 2 years, I would say that it's a fraction of FTE, of full-time equivalent, really like 0.0 or even smaller, to have an RDP in your infrastructure, because you don't get incidents reported to you every day or not even every week, and you don't have to spend that much time. The biggest hurdles that you have to overcome is getting the management and all the higher position colleagues in the organization on board, have all these internal processes get working, who forwards the information to whom, how soon they fix it, where they get the budget, and so on. One additional thing that we sort of first decided, since we were starting from zero to implement it, was not to already go with bug bounty, because we were not having any data about how many incidents will we get once we announce the RDP, whether it will be 10, 100 or whatever. So it's hard to predict what it will cost you in the end. Plus, we have already seen at that point that whenever someone wants to report vulnerability, he actually wants, if they know that there would be some reward, they would, for any means, try to psychologically escalate that this is a very crucial, critical incident, and therefore you must reward me the highest from the range that you have reported, for example, because it's been seen by other companies as well. And another point that I actually heard from David Williams from Netherlands when we had another RDP discussion is that as soon as you create a bug bounty, you actually create a guaranteed market for black hat or gray hat hackers that they know that they can search for vulnerabilities, and they already have guaranteed minimum price, the price that you are going to pay if they discover it. But if they know that there will be some higher bidder in the deep web, then they can sell it to whoever they want. But if you don't have a bug bounty but something else, then they are not sure whether there is sense in actually trying to discover vulnerability, and because maybe they won't be able to sell it at all. So only actually positively motivated people do it. What else? Yeah, started 2014. Overall, I would say that experience so far has been absolutely positive, and statistics are so far that basically around 90% of all the vulnerabilities reported are of low severity, meaning they are cross-site scripting, and only maybe 10% are something very interesting like SQL injections or some interesting vulnerability in business logic, how the authentication goes and so on. Yeah, and we have seen that actually these vulnerabilities tend to cluster around some sort of similar systems which were made by maybe the same team of programmers, and often we actually see that the lowest, sorry for saying that, but the lowest quality of all the websites that we have are actually the ones that we have outsourced for partners to implement. Because the critical infrastructure that you have, of course, those are implemented by your very best programmers in your own company, and whatever is something that doesn't even have client data, but is, for example, just a website that explains what's the difference between all the deposit ways or the pension funds or how to calculate your insurance on a car, which doesn't contain your data, that we can sort of outsource. And for those projects, it depends company by company how they have been taking security how much seriously. And then you can actually see that if one sort of this website has vulnerabilities, if one person through our RDP reports vulnerability to us, it's often that the same site actually, if we ask to check the source code, contains very similar vulnerability in a lot of places. And even actually, if you take that vendor and look which projects he has implemented for you, you can actually sort of see a cluster of vulnerabilities. So that is another reason why often it is not possible to very quickly fix the vulnerability that's been reported, because we want to make sure that all of the types of vulnerabilities that are from this vendor or during this project are actually fixed. What we were also surprised was that in a lot of cases there were vulnerabilities reported to systems that we even thought were not like enabled, because there are in a lot of web pages you can have content that is enabled or disabled, or even websites that maybe you think you have already sort of discontinued, but they are actually still up and running. For example, we have had markets where Swedbank has exited, and for that country, for example, some web page is still left, so everyone has forgotten about it, and still it's actually still live and well and vulnerable. Yeah, so the biggest challenges within the organization is always tracking the right person who is responsible for fixing this specific project or website. And since for all of the developers, they are already always working on ongoing future projects, then bug fixing something that's maybe 3 or 4 or 7 years old, it's always not the primary priority unless it's something serious above just simple cross-site scripting. Yeah, in future, we sort of want to really look at possibilities to create not just a kudos system where we allow to publish the vulnerability, but actually create something, some other reward system, but that we are still thinking of. And basically that should be it. Yeah. Maybe now the Q&A session.
Do you like for online? Yeah, I'll get you one. For the recording. Sure. Okay, so I was just wondering if you thought about the trust relationship between researchers and the supplier of the RDP or the bug bounty, and how that's broken, or I find it stressful sometimes as a hacker or pen tester, finding bugs, reporting it to a company, and then them saying it's not a vulnerability, or then saying that they won't acknowledge it or anything like that. And I think it comes from a trust relationship. I wonder if you had any experience about that.
Well, so far, as also presented by BIBA, if a person doesn't, if there is a case that, for example, our organization or whoever else would not react, there is a possibility to go either through national SIRT or through a national financial regulator. Okay. So if it is a real vulnerability, it will be picked up and handled. Okay. Actually, during our experience, we've had a couple of cases where vulnerabilities reported in a way that if it's a high caliber researcher, he always reports it in a very precise manner so that you can very quickly replicate it and verify it. But there are some cases where we just get a comment, you have a vulnerability in your web page. Right. Okay, thank you, but could you be more specific? It's like here in this subsection. Could you be more specific with the like? And then it goes on and on till you finally actually verify what was the request that actually generated. Another interesting case was that there was a misconfiguration that only applied if the infrastructure is so overloaded that the server stack is unable to serve requests to the clients. So there's actually a backup solution and the response is fetched for that backup solution. But that you cannot even verify unless you are a person in you cannot easily see it unless you are a person who happens to visit specific page at a specific time of day in a specific country where there happens to be an overload for a couple of seconds. So it was also an interesting case, but yeah.
I guess I was just going on, like, I think it takes trust on both ends, and often I'm finding that the relationship is hurting in some ways, and seeing if you had seen that. Like your first slide was around, we'll fix it, we'll address and we'll give you updates, and on my side, my expectation would be, I'll disclose something to you responsibly, I won't go public with it or to full disclosure, and you'll do your part of fixing it and acknowledging it. And from my experience, that's not always the case, and I didn't know if you had seen that on either end.
Well, we always try to follow up, but also for us it's allowed to submit it anonymously. So you can, if you don't want to disclose your personal details, you can create an anonymous email account and just send it to us, and we sign all our responses so that you know that we actually received it to the security team. But otherwise, it's not, if somebody is afraid of his identity being prosecuted and so on, he can do it anonymously.
Okay, but before we continue, we're just the speakers self-organizing, and it's being recorded and being put on YouTube, so that's why it's for the microphone.
Yes.
So, you know, not surprised. Any other questions?
I just want to comment on this.
Oh, sure.
So, just to comment on this situation, that's one of the roles that at SIRT we are trying to do diligently, that people that report us, that they are kept informed, because it's very easy to forget, especially if it's a stressful situation and you have to work with provider and with media, etc., then it's very easy to forget to inform the researcher. So I know exactly what you are talking about.
Anyone else? Oh, look, then I can ask a question if you like. I am Chris from the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands we also have responsible disclosure with the banks. But there, the bank said, well, if one bank will start with this process, he will get all the hackers. So then the banks amongst each other, as a sector, said, well, we're going to do it together, you know, so you don't have a competitive advantage if you don't. So we just take the financial sector as a whole to open up responsible disclosure. So did Swedbank also negotiate with other banks, to say, warning them, well, we are going to do this? Are you going along, or there's no communication there?
I think there was some communication in Scandinavia, but it wasn't sort of trying to get everyone on board, because that was seen as too unrealistic in a short time frame. Because we wanted to implement it like in a couple of months, and we did it. Because as soon as you have more than 2 or 3 banks that need to negotiate, I think it becomes increasingly hard, especially if you have some banks that are whose home market is the specific country, or who just happens to be there as a branch and so on. And to agree within the whole Scandinavian Baltics between like 5 or 10 big banks would be enormously time consuming. So I think this is faster. One does it and the rest can follow if they want. And I don't think it's even been a case that everyone has quickly flocked to us. It just...
So how did they respond? Like, what the hell are you doing? You're attracting hackers to us? Or did they say, yeah, you go for it?
I actually haven't heard response from them, so. I think probably they were happy, like, have a go. So we will be safe at least.
You didn't mention numbers, but maybe you can give us idea. It would be 10 cases in these 2 years, or 50, or...
Well, I'm not allowed to disclose the precise case number.
The range.
Yeah, the range is, well, whatever I put as an upper bound for the range, the press will take that Swedbank has had almost that amount of attacks. But so I won't name the upper range, but it's more than you probably, you mentioned 50. We've had more than that in whole Scandinavia and Baltics through 2 years. But it's not in the high hundreds. It's more than 50.
Yeah, we just keep on doing this until you have a question, right? Okay. And let me ask a very simple question. What kind of rewards do the hackers get? Mostly they don't just need money, but rather the credits, you know. They give T-shirts, they give, you know, all sorts of stuff. A wall of fame mostly works best, that you have a wall saying, well, this person, either the real name or the pseudonym, helped us solving cross-site scripting in the website, this and that. And so what kind of credits do they get?
In our case, it's better than one of the presentations that I heard for automobiles. Ford just says, we won't sue you. We do it better. Not only does he's allowed, of course, to go publicly, but actually we don't specify it, but we try every time to arrange something specifically with a person based on experience. But we don't want ever to promise something, and that's why we are looking whether in future we can formalize and promise something. But now it's not a Hall of Fame or something like that, because there are many of those. I think it depends also on what the researchers would want to sort of see, because I've actually heard in a lot of discussions that a lot of people say, okay, I don't actually want money myself to me, but could you please, for that sum of money, donate it to whatever charity or non-profit organization or some open source project, which would actually be a very good case that we could also do. It's just that we need sort of a critical mass of persons who ask for it, because if it's just an idea from 1 or 2 or 3 persons, then maybe again re-establishing the internal RDP, because we have to sort of sync it in across the whole Swedbank group, we then have to know that there will be use cases for that.
Okay, because the reason why I'm asking is that most of the ethical hackers I know not necessarily have a university degree. They work here and there, so their curriculum is a bit obscure. And they need these vulnerability reports in order to prove that they're good. You know, I know a guy of 16 years old who's got 200 responsible disclosures on his name. And all the big firms, you know, they queue up in order to get him hired. And practically he doesn't have any education at all, but the 200 responsible disclosures really help him getting a good job. So can you help ethical hackers in that way, that you say, well, if you're going to apply for a job, we can concur that you filed a report at Swedbank
I think
and
if
followed it
some,
in a good manner.
If some potential hiring company would try to get a reference from us, we would definitely confirm that yes, it's been a case. But it's also that this person can also, after disclosing, go publicly and show that I have actually done this thing. And that's what we were hoping initially, that we've seen quite a low activity in the whole of Baltics actually, and the amount of activity in Sweden for responsible disclosure is not linear to the amount of people that are living in each country. It's like exponential. I'm not sure whether that's due to security companies that are already in place, because we've seen reports both from already established security researchers who actually want to try their established techniques or tools on our infrastructure, as well as some people who don't maybe work on it professionally, but they want to go try. And of course, I would encourage that this is a very good opportunity if you are a young person who maybe doesn't have any formal job experience and you want to show to somebody your actual skills. That's the good thing that you can do. You can do it through responsible disclosure and then show that here's the stuff that I'm skilled at. But I don't see that young people in Baltics have caught the idea that this is actually sort of a business opportunity for them that could be used. It's only in other countries they see it that way and they can actually use it, but not here yet.
What is the proportion between anonymous reports and those who report revealing their identity?
I think at least 80% are with known contact details, and less than 20 definitely are anonymous.
Yes. Okay, I guess that's it. Edgar, thank you very much.